I have finally done it, ladies and gentlemen. I have finally completed my 2024 NBA mock draft. I did, of course, stop at the 20th overall pick just because this draft class is so weak. I really didn't want to take any more players after that because some of the players ranked 20 might not above 20, sorry, might not even get drafted somehow. But in today's video, we're going to be talking about picks 1 through pick 20 in my official 2024 NBA mock draft. Of course, we will be going based off the standings at the time of making this video. Again, a couple of things have been changed in terms of, like, I think the Spurs now have the 4th pick or something, right, instead of the 3rd. But at the end of the day, I still would take the exact players I've got them taking with the picks that I have them selecting at. Again, at the time making this video as well, we don't know the official 2024 NBA mock draft, NBA draft lottery, sorry, I should say. So again, if you're like watching this in a bit and you're like, well, no, the Pistons don't have pick 1, they've got pick 4 because they lost again in the draft. You know, suck my ball. No, hold on, we won't go there. But again, actually, please refrain from commenting that because the lottery hasn't happened yet. So I don't know what it is. I can't read in the future. So we're just going based off NBA standings for now, right? So I don't know. I guess without further ado, this video took me a long time to make. So picks 1 through pick 20 in my official 2024 NBA mock draft starting now. The Detroit Pistons do have the 1st overall pick. Well, I do have them taking Zachary Rashad. Hold on, scratch that. I definitely mispronounced his name. Zachary Rasache, I should say. Again, there's a lot of, like, foreign players in this draft who have, to me, some funky names that are definitely perfectly normal from where they come from. Again, they probably think my name's pretty funky over there. But again, Zachary Rasache is an extremely good player. It's definitely a battle of him and Alexander Sarr, I think, for this 1st overall pick. And I think if Washington had pick 1, they probably would take Sarr. So it kind of works out with, of course, the Pistons at the time making this video having one where they will take Rasache, who is a 6'9", 6'10", extremely versatile small forward who has definitely jumped in the draft ranks as I think the weeks have really gone on. He does have a couple of different NBA comparisons, one of course being Franz Wagner. He excels at creating space for his shot. He has an extremely deadly step back where he can also hit a really good jump shot from that as well. Again, an extremely good open court athlete who offensive talent is just really, really good. He's been said to have one of the best shooting strokes in this whole entire draft, while also being able to be a very good ball handler. With his extremely good ball handling, it also is said that he can be a pretty good passer and playmaker, and he's also pretty good on the defensive end. And this just works really, really well for the Detroit Pistons, who will definitely be looking to add a couple more wings and forwards, I think, in this offseason, considering they've presumably already got Asar Thompson and Jalen Duren in that starting 5, who already aren't good 3-point shooters at all. I think they definitely need to add some spacing into that lineup. They did obviously also lose Bojan Bogdanovic in the trade deadline to the New York Knicks. So again, they're definitely going to be looking for, I think, quite a bit of spacing and quite a bit of 3-point shooting, considering we don't really know what Asar Thompson's ceiling is going to be like. Will he just be an elite defender in that starting lineup? We're not too sure, and even if that is the case, you still kind of do take that. And just adding a guy like this who can not only take, I think, some of the playmaking potentially and ball handling, of course, off Cade Cunningham, and just giving them another option on that side of the ball. He also can help out with the defense, which Detroit have been pretty notable on for having ever since their inception in the NBA. Of course, that has dropped off in the recent couple of years, but I definitely think Detroit are really going to try and get back to that. And with the Asar Thompson pick last year and the new potential pick this year, I think Zachary Rasache really does just come in and he kind of fills every single void that they really do need to fill. Maybe not straight away, but I think the ceiling for this dude could obviously be a really good NBA star and potentially, another option to add to Cade Cunningham, who will obviously also hopefully be an all-star for them in the future as well. So I really like this pick for the Detroit Pistons, and I think it just makes a lot of sense in terms of, again, filling that spacing need, adding another shot creator who can also help out on the defensive end. He can ball handle as well. Again, there's not exactly that much that Rasache really can't do. So I think this makes a ton of sense and would really build on to their low-key impressive young core that's kind of building in Detroit right now. With the second overall pick, we do have the Washington Wizards, who are really now starting to hit this full rebuild mode, which I think is it's definitely a long time coming, and they're definitely adding some really, really nice pieces. And it so does happen that with the second overall pick, I think there is a perfect player for them here who is going to help out so much on this team if they do, of course, decide to draft him. A guy who I think could possibly be the first overall pick, depending how this goes, is, of course, Alexander Sarr, who, in my opinion, I do think is possibly the best player in this draft class. He is a 7'1" power forward / center who just came off a season with the Perth Wildcats in the NBL, who I think are kind of renowned as the greatest Australian basketball team that we have seen so far. He had an extremely impressive season for them, really quickly becoming one of the best defenders in the whole entire league, which is already been noted to be one of the best defending leagues in the whole entire world. Again, there's a lot of different names that people are kind of throwing, as this guy with a comparison. I think this guy plays a bit like Evan Mobley. Again, in terms of being a dude who I don't necessarily know is 100% a center, similar to how Mobley has come into the NBA. He was kind of drafted as a center, but with the Cavs already having Jarrett Allen, they moved him to power forward, and because he was so versatile at defending the perimeter, he's actually done really, really well there. Again, Alexander Sarr is really like that as well. Again, extremely versatile defender that is so elite at getting up to the perimeter and switching on those plays. And with a season in the NBL, a league that is so known for defense with so many elite defensive coaches, you can already tell that it has severely improved him so much more to being one of the best, if not the best defender in this draft class. He also has an extremely good mid-range, and again, I haven't really even talked about this yet, but is really, really good on offense. The guy moves like a wing, like legitimately, like that's the best part of him. Not only does he move like a wing on defense, this dude moves like a wing on offense. Extremely good mid-range shot, really good in the paint. Again, his three-point shot, obviously similar to Evan Mobley, might need definitely some work here and there, but you definitely see like attributes where this dude could hopefully become a three-point shooter. Again, typically if you've got a really good mid-range, that's already a great stepping stone, and you just can't tell me this dude wouldn't be the most perfect player to add to the Washington Wizards team as they stand. I think the Wizards legitimately need like a lot at most positions right now, especially the center position, after they of course got rid of Daniel Gafford and made a couple other moves. There's definitely a massive hole right there at center, and I mean, even power forward, like they could definitely use a guy who could switch on both of those positions. Now, Will he be a center straight away? I'm not too sure. On most teams, he would probably start at power forward, but with how the Wizards are going right now, again, they probably can afford to put him at the center position and let him develop, there quite well. And again, with how he is going in the NBA right now, the fact that he's 7'1" and can guard the perimeter to an elite level, he's going to work so well in the NBA. I think he's got like Evan Mobley, in my opinion, kind of written all over him in terms of how he plays. And I think if you're the Washington Wizards, you are going to absolutely love that. Again, he really does fill in a ton of holes that they, of course, need to fill. And I do think this might be a semi-long rebuild for the Wizards. I think they definitely need to hit another draft or two after this one. But yeah, Alexander Sarr is an elite start for them. And I think, in my opinion, he is the best player in the draft. Of course, I didn't have him at 1 just because I think Rasace really does fit a lot more needs that the Pistons have. But both players are like neck and neck for that first overall pick. And I think if you manage to get him as the Washington Wizards, this is a terrific move for them. Now, with the 3rd overall pick, we have the San Antonio Spurs, and this is definitely one of the hardest picks to do because we know that in a lot of drafts, the Spurs don't traditionally take the most common player that everyone has them taking other than Victor Wembanyama. Of course, Jeremy Sohan was definitely an interesting pick, such a Spurs player. Again, not a lot of people had him going at 9, but I think if you knew how the Spurs really drafted and went about their game plan, then yeah, it made a ton of sense. So I really had to kind of take that into factor while I think doing this mock draft with the San Antonio Spurs. And with all that being said and done, I actually do think with the 3rd overall pick, they might select Nikola Topic, who is definitely a really hard one to grade because I think a couple of weeks ago would have been a very logical pick 3, but as you guys have probably heard, a couple of reports here and there have had him sliding to like 5 and 6. I still think he makes a ton of sense to have on this San Antonio Spurs team, considering he does a lot of really, really good things that they need. They, of course, like to bring in their foreign players as well. He is an elite playmaker with great passing vision and great instincts. I really do think this is the type of guy who would be a really awesome player to have with Wembanyama long term and also have as his point guard. Not only is he an elite playmaker who, again, is extremely versatile with all of that, he actually has a pretty good looking 3-point stroke as well, and he's a pretty nice defender. Also being listed at 6'6" to 6'7", depending on what page you, of course, are looking at. This guy should be able to, again, switch 1 through 3, definitely on both of those guards. I just think this makes a ton of sense for the San Antonio Spurs. In my opinion, Tre Jones is a good point guard. I like Tre Jones, but I think he would be better served as a backup point guard in the league, especially at the moment. Again, he has improved, I think, a fair bit this season, but I think it's time now to bring in a dude who can be a really, really good playmaker for this team, an absolute floor general who also fits into the defensive system that the San Antonio Spurs have wanted to do quite a bit. And something that I actually really like about this Topic pick as well is I think one of the best things about the San Antonio Spurs right now is that I think they have a decent amount of shot creators, right? They've got Wembanyama, they've got Vassell, and of course they've got Keldon Johnson, who has been moved to a bit of a 6-man type of role. But you got those 3 really good shot creators, I think, on this team. Of course, you would maybe like a 4th or so, but I think you can possibly find that in free agency. I think the best part about Topic is this guy, I think, can play not only off ball, but I don't think he needs the ball in his hands to be a really good player. I don't think he needs to be a shot creator on this team, considering they've already got all of those guys to do that role. I think if Vassell, Johnson, and Wembanyama had a really good playmaker who could also go and be a three-point shooter, that would really do a lot of good to this San Antonio Spurs team. I just think this makes a ton of sense in terms of that. And if they really want to get back to that old Greg Popovich style of being one of the best, if not the best defensive teams in the league, I think Topic, helps that as well, as he is a versatile defender who is also 6'6", 6'7", who can possibly, of course, switch, I think, not only in the 1 and 2, but hopefully on, the 3 as well. Again, this dude is also, as I said, not only tall, but he is a pretty big dude who has a lot of strength. Again, his defensive ability is really, really good. Decent three-point shooter, can play make. He's good around the rim as well and can draw contact in the lane, being a pretty good creative finisher around the rim. Again, he might not be the most elite, I think, first step kind of guy, and his burst isn't necessarily that good. Of course, being a taller point guard, it might come with him being a little bit slower than most point guards in the NBA. Yeah, this is just a great pick by the San Antonio Spurs, and I definitely think this could be the decision they, of course, do decide to go with. Now, with the 4th overall pick, we have the Charlotte Hornets, who I think get a lot of unnecessary hate at the moment. I think they're actually building something pretty good there with LaMelo Ball and, of course, a couple other dudes on this team as well. And I think another guy they could really definitely add is actually Cody Williams, who a lot of people have, kind of in the top 3 as well. He's actually the younger brother of OKC wing Jalen Williams, which for some reason I didn't know. I don't know why I didn't know this, but I have seen people legitimately having this guy at pick 1, and I think he could make a case there. I also think, though, this guy just fits in really well with the Charlotte Hornets roster. Again, he is a 6'8" wing/forward who I think, again, as I said, has pick 1 kind of written all over him right now. I definitely have seen it right now. I think he fits in with Brandon Miller and potentially Miles Bridges. It would be a very tall 1 to 4-man rotation. LaMelo being 6'7", Bridges 6'7", 6'8", Brandon Miller's 6'8", Cody Williams is 6'8". This dude is the ideal size for a wing, has really good length as well. He'll be able to switch from the 2 to the 4. He's even had comparisons to Tracy McGrady, with one website saying he's Tracy McGrady all over, except he's just, again, not as explosive when it comes to his verticality. But this dude is a really great rebounder, really good with the ball in his hands, can run an offense by himself. Again, his playmaking is pretty decent as well. Extremely good at getting to the rim and driving there. He also has that really good ability of just being able to drive while also kicking it out, kind of collapsing the defense there. The other thing is, too, not only is his offense pretty good, but he can also be a really good defender, being listed as one of the best two-way players in this draft right now. Again, I would say he could definitely be a top 3 defender in this draft while being a top 5 player offensively as well. Oddly enough, something that a lot of people as well don't talk about is this guy seems to be a pretty decent 3-point shooter, I believe, actually averaging around 41% in his college season right now, which I feel like no one has even brought up. I'm reading a lot of these scouting reports on him, and no one's kind of talking about his 3-point shot being 41%, which is pretty interesting. So we'll definitely see how that does go to the NBA, but right now, I do actually think he makes a ton of sense for this Charlotte Hornets team. I think this Charlotte Hornets team could quickly become one of the most athletic squads in the game, with, of course, Cody Williams, Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball, and Miles Bridges. That is pretty crazy. Again, some people might argue that the three-point shooting of this team might be a little bit hit or miss, but again, I know that Miles Bridges can sometimes not be the greatest three-point shooter. I guess Jalen Williams has a question mark on his three-point shooting, which I don't know how. 41% from three is pretty good. Their center, whoever they have at center, whether it's Nick Richards or whatever, it probably can't shoot, obviously. And then LaMelo, I still think is a good shooter, but people would beg to differ. I disagree on that, though. Again, I guess I'm just a bit of a fan of this Charlotte Hornets team, and I think they're low-key kind of underrated. And with enough building blocks and players like I think Cody Williams being added to this team, I don't see why it couldn't become really good. And I still think this team could be one of the best defensively in the NBA, with literally everyone on this team, starting five, probably being over 6'7" next season if they do decide to draft Cody Williams. So again, that is what it is. The 5th overall pick now, we have the Portland Trailblazers, and I hope everyone forgives me if I pronounce this guy's name wrong, because I have heard about 18 different pronunciations of, in my lifetime of this dude's not only his last name, but his first name. But that's actually Martz Baziles. Now, this guy is also playing for the G League Ignite, which does look like it probably won't be a thing next season, I believe. But again, that's still elite competition, having to play in the G League. There is a ton of really good players in the G League, like Sharif Cooper, who just aren't NBA level, but are elite of the elite basketballers in the world. And that's the competition Baziles has to really go against. Again, this dude is a 6'10" small forward who is an extremely, I think, big wing. I've seen some people say this dude could possibly play a bit of shooting guard. I'm not exactly too sure, but considering this guy's got great handles and elite court vision as well, he is great with the ball in his hands. And one of his big, I think, notable things about his play is when he's on the court, the ball movement and the flow on offense looks absolutely crisp as well. Again, he's played on the ball a lot. A lot of people are actually comparing him a bit to Michael Porter Jr., bit of like a prime Gordon Hayward as well. Really, really good offensive player, just like those guys. Again, really smooth and promising three-point shot that could be absolutely elite in the NBA. Again, some of the question marks on this guy is some people are saying, will he just be an elite role player like what Michael Porter Jr. has become? Or could he maybe develop into being what like Gordon Hayward was when he was that all-star kind of caliber player? Again, he does have a bit of a thin frame, pretty skinny kind of guy, but again, get him in the gym, get some KFC into this guy or something, I'm not too sure, and I think he will definitely bulk up for the NBA as well. This dude is just really awesome to watch on offense, though. Like, just watching him space the floor with his three-point shooting while also being elite with his ball handling when he does have it. Of course, the flow of offense when this guy is on there as well, and just the ability he has, again, with every offensive tool, being a nice floor spacer. I still think this guy can develop into being a pretty good shot creator, like what Michael Porter Jr. and Gordon Hayward has well. He's really good all-around game. I think he can find the right player and be a nice playmaker as well. That kind of coincides with the good ball handling that he does have. I also think he would be a pretty good player, though, to add to this Portland Trailblazers team. Again, I saw somewhere the other day that said that Scoot Henderson actually broke the record for like the worst plus minus. A lot of people are saying he's the worst player in the NBA. I really do disagree with this, and I think any Portland fan worrying should not. He's going to be hopefully a really, really good player in the NBA, and Baziles coming into this team, I think, makes a ton of sense as well. Being a really good, solid role player who can help boost this offense on this squad, and Scoot Henderson kind of rolling with him and maybe being his playmaker would be a really awesome sight to see. I can just imagine right now Scoot Henderson driving, getting into trouble, kicking it out, and you have Baziles there right on that 3-point line. Jeremy Grant also potentially there next season as well. I think Grant and Baziles could be a pretty good 1-2 punch at that 4 positions. And look, there's bright spots on this Trailblazers team. Duop Reith looking like a really good player as well. DeAndre Ayton getting better and better as the season has gone on. Again, I think it just give this Trailblazers team some time, a couple more trades here and there, and I think this rebuild might go a little bit quicker than what a lot of people do have them at. Again, it might take another draft or two, but I think Baziles kind of adds a lot to this team and helps boost, I think, their offense and potentially makes Scoot Henderson an even better player than he already is. With this 6th overall pick, which of course at the time making this video does currently belong to the Toronto Raptors. And again, the Raptors have always been, I feel like, a harder team to draft from in the last couple years because they could take absolutely any position, because I feel like they've got a lot of really decent players in their starting 5, like Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, again, Emmanuel Quickley, etc., who, again, are pretty decent in their respective positions. Of course, their bench is definitely one of the more weak ones in the league. So with this pick, though, I did just kind of think, well, let's just go with who I think is best available, which is Robert Dillingham, who is arguably the best point guard in this draft so far. Again, of course, I did have Nikola Topic going at pick 4, who I do believe is maybe the best, but also fits what the Spurs needed at that pick. But again, the Raptors really can't go wrong with Dillingham. I really don't think at this pick. Again, he is an elite player when it comes to his speed and athleticism. Great ball handler who is extremely crafty and great at losing defenders with his insanely quick dribble moves. He's a great playmaker with just insanely good court vision, very capable of executing really high speed plays. He also happens to be one of the best shot creators in this draft and puts a ton of effort into both ends of the court. A couple downsides can potentially be his defense sometimes is not exactly great, although again, puts in a fair bit of effort. It is said that he can get pushed off pretty easily and can be used as a mismatch target, which does scare me a little bit because Toronto, I feel like, have kind of, I think, really based themselves off having great defense in the previous couple years, but with some new coaching here and there, you can tell they're really trying to, I think, embrace a new offensive game style. And I think Dillingham works really well with this Raptors team, because I look at this Raptors team right now and I see a lot of really, really good things, but one thing I don't see a whole lot of is playmaking. Again, Scotty Barnes, I think, is a really underrated ball handler and playmaker, and he's going to get better and better with that every year. Emmanuel Quickley is definitely much more of a, shot first, I think, shot creator kind of guy. But Dillingham, not only is he a great shot creator, but he's extremely quick and is a very good pass of the ball, who I think is going to work really, really well with a couple of these Raptors players. Again, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this, because they might already think that Emmanuel Quickley is, of course, their future point guard, which I do expect could be the case. But I have no reason to see that maybe both of these guys couldn't potentially start together at the guards. Again, I don't really see too many reasons not to try potentially both of these guys together. And it's really like, well, whoever you draft at this pick is probably going to be a position they almost already have, filled. Like if they were to draft the center, well, you've already got Jakob Poeltl there. If you're going to draft the forward, well, you've already got RJ Barrett and you've already got Scotty Barnes. I just figured they probably need another guard. I'm not exactly too sure what the long-term future is of Emmanuel Quickley at that point guard position, even though I actually have liked what I've seen on the Raptors. I think it is time to bring in a guy who can really play make and, of course, be an awesome passer to a guy like Scotty Barnes. And I think that Dillingham does that really, really well. Again, a ton of great things to like about him, and his only knock is he might, not be exactly the greatest defender, but honestly, at the point guard position at 6'2" in the NBA, I definitely feel like he will be able to settle in with that. And again, we've seen Emmanuel Quickly as well have a lot of experience at playing the shooting guard. I just think this pick makes a ton of sense. He's definitely the best player available with this pick, and I really do think the Raptors, it'd be awesome for them to finally bring in a playmaker and a dude who can, of course, you know, not only do that, but shot create as well, which would be something really awesome to help out, of course, Scotty Barnes. With the 6th overall pick, I will, of course, have the Toronto Raptors selecting Robert Dillingham. And now, with the 7th overall pick, we, of course, do have the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, again, the Grizzlies have had a very interesting year, which has earned them quite a high pick. And I actually think there's a really good player for them available with this selection. And that is, of course, Zach Edey, who has been absolutely awesome for quite a while now. Again, he just recently came off the March Madness championship game where he absolutely dominated. Again, unfortunately for him, was not able to get the win over UConn, but of course, I believe I saw somewhere where he scored like 62% of their points, and of course, I think it was like 37. This dude is an absolutely beast scorer, being a 7'4" center, who I think really does fit into this Grizzlies team. He also fills in the positional need that I think they do have based off center. It's really hard to know if Jaren Jackson Jr. will be a center in the NBA, or if he will remain as a power forward, as sometimes he's looked good at center so far this season for the Grizzlies, but other times it's like he's just, I don't really know. He definitely gets caught out by some certain centers, even though he's a really good interior defender. Again, Zach Edey is really, compared to a couple of really awesome players over the NBA's time, including Yao Ming, kind of being his ceiling. It's being said that he's like Yao Ming, just with less mobility, which I guess is a really kind of weird comparison. Again, obviously for Yao Ming's size and height, he was pretty mobile, but again, compared to other NBA players, not so much. It's being said that Edey has really nice hands and a good touch around the rim. He finishes extremely solid and has developed into being a really good free throw shooter, shooting over 70%. He's also not only 7'4", but he's an extremely big 7'4", being over 300 pounds, which is actually bigger than Boban Marjanovic, which to think is absolutely insane. He's also said to be one of the best defenders in the NBA, being able to clog any lane, and he alters absolutely every shot he sees. Again, watching him in some of these college games, this dude is an absolutely massive shot blocking machine. Like, if you are in a 10-meter radius from this guy, he will be absolutely huge and will block you so bad that it'll be an embarrassing and you'll end up on a highlight reel. One of the knocks on Zach Edey that I've heard some people say is he's, of course, obviously extremely good, you know, at the college level. And I think this is the knock that I've got him taking a 7 with. Again, I'm seeing a lot of people have this guy go at like pick 3 in their mock draft. But some of the knocks have been said is, will he be able to fit in today's NBA, being so tall and being so big? Will he, of course, be able to do it? Again, he is not exactly the fastest guy out there and will definitely not be able to get to the perimeter at all. But the realistic thing is, if you put this guy in, of course, in the paint, he will be absolutely dominant. And I really do look at a guy like this and I think, well, is there a guy out there in the NBA? And there's not exactly too many names, but a guy I know is, of course, being Rudy Gobert, who I think Rudy Gobert garnered that much hate that he actually ended up becoming underrated, and we've now seen what he has been able to do with Minnesota this, of course, most recent season. Again, I feel like Zach Edey is kind of like Rudy Gobert, where he can't exactly be that great of getting to the perimeter, but he is unstoppable when it comes to the paint and can also be a decent, I think, pick and roll player, which people don't talk about. Gobert is actually not that bad in. People just think that Gobert has no offensive game whatsoever, which is just untrue. again, Zach Edey is a huge guy who's definitely going to get a rebound when needed. He will be one of the best defenders, of course, in this whole entire draft. And we've seen he is an absolutely massive scoring machine, scoring, of course, 37 points in his most recent college game. So, look, I think having a guy like him with Jaren Jackson is so scary. Like, having both of those dudes as these really massive elite defenders will definitely be something that I think could actually work. And it's kind of what like Minnesota are doing right now with Cat and Gobert, and Cavs have done with Mobley and Allen. Lakers previously with, of course, Anthony Davis and JaVale McGee. This could definitely be the best out of, all of them if it does, of course, work well. Will he translate to the NBA? I'm not too sure. But this guy is putting double-doubles left, right, and center in college, 7'4", and an extremely good defender. So I guess you can only try, and I think with how Memphis have credited themselves with massive defensive teams over the past couple years, why not give it a go? So that's why I think this pick, of course, does make sense. Now, with the 8th overall pick, we have the Utah Jazz, and you can basically pick any position for these guys. They're looking for quite a fair bit, of course. They got a really good and awesome young core on that team so far, but are definitely looking to add some guys here. And with a couple of the different positional needs, but also looking at their best, the best player available, I have actually gone with Donovan King from, of course, Klingan, who is a 7'2" center who absolutely dominated recently in March Madness, of course, helping the Huskies win it all. He is an extremely good big who I think has jumped in a lot of mock drafts as of recently. It is being said he's a great rim protector with great touch around the rim. Oddly enough, actually a pretty solid passer for a big man. He's a great rebounder, whether it's offensive or defensive, and a pretty efficient scorer. Of course, there have always been downsides with certain centers like this. It's being said he's not a good switchable defender, not a good shooter, which I don't see as an issue. And of course, really in today's NBA, where even though shooting's pretty necessary, I still think there are a lot of centers who can't shoot, who are extremely good. Again, players like Jarrett Allen, who aren't exactly the greatest shooters out there, that just do the job day and night and are very, very good. And Klingan is, of course, currently being compared to Steven Adams and Jakob Poeltl, who both players have severely gone underrated in their careers thus far, and I still think have a lot of really good years under their belt to do quite a fair good amount of things. I just think this pick makes a lot of sense right now for the Utah Jazz, as they're definitely looking for who their future center is going to be in the NBA. Again, for a long time, it looked like Walker Kessler was going to be their center, and then of course they decided not to start Kessler throughout a ton of games this year, preferably for them playing John Collins at that starting center position. Then I've even seen, after Collins, I've seen them go pretty small ball and play Larry Markkinen at that center position as well, who, again, is not small, obviously being 7 foot, but just doesn't really, of course, play like a center at all. He plays a lot like a small forward or power forward in today's game. So they're definitely out and about looking for who I think their future starting center is, of course, going to be. And with Donovan King just succeeding really, really well as of late and averaging a really respectable, I believe, 13 points per game and 7.5 rebounds. Not only can he do all of that, but this guy is doing a ton of other things, like, of course, his defense being pretty respectable. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where this guy goes. I've seen ESPN actually have him ranked at number 3, while a lot of other drafting, websites do have him ranked at around 10 to 12. I've, of course, kind of met in the middle here, having him at 8, but I do think he just makes a ton of sense for this Utah Jazz team. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Kessler in the future. I think there's been some minor trade talks. I'm not exactly too sure what's going to be going on there. Again, Kessler I think his ceiling is a lot lower than what a guy like Klingen's probably is. So it's going to be kind of really interesting to see how this, of course, does go. But again, the man just dominated in what will be most likely his final season, of course, of college, putting up excellent stats, being a great defender, being a pretty decent passer as well, and of course, taking the Huskies to the promised land. So you really can't ask for anything more like that. Getting an absolutely massive proven winner who did actually, of course, take down my previous pick, Zach Edey, in, of course, the championship game. But again, I still kind of give Edey the edge for now. Of course, he did have a insane game, and it's just proved to be a little bit better. But again, some might argue that Klingen might actually, of course, convert to the NBA a little bit better than Edey, which I think, of course, Utah Jazz fans will be very excited to hear, as I do have them taking him with the 8th overall pick. But moving on now to pick number 9, we have the Houston Rockets, who I definitely debated between about 5 different players who I would have them taking. Again, it definitely went through my mind. Could they have gone with a Reed Shepherd? Maybe not. They've already got Van Vliet and a couple other different point guards. Could they have gone with a Philipi? Maybe not. Again, they're pretty good on the center position. There's definitely a ton of players they could potentially take here, but I decided to go with another wing/forward in Dalton Knight, who has really boosted his draft stock as of recent. Again, kind of doing very well in college, as he's an elite shooter, a very solid athlete who will likely be able to contribute to the NBA straight away, already being around 22 years old, I believe. An extremely great finisher around the rim, elite in transition. He gets down the floor before anyone else and is extremely effective at finishing plays at high speeds. Again, some might argue his defense might not be the greatest thing at this rate, but definitely has improved, as he has gone on. Some of the comparisons I've seen are actually calling him a little bit taller, a little bit of a better defender, of course, than what Norman Powell is. Powell being an incredibly underrated, I think, three-point shooter and role player. That's what I was trying to say, for a very long time. Again, doing really well on the Clippers this season, putting himself in 6-man contention. I think this is something like Knight could, of course, do on this Houston Rockets team. He averaged 21.7 points per game for Tennessee. Again, having a game where he scored 37 points with a field goal of 13 out of 17, getting his 6 rebounds, of course. I think he just comes in really well and adds to what I think this Houston Rockets team is, of course, trying to do. I believe as well this Rockets team might be even a little bit weaker on, natural wings as of this point. Again, you got guys like Van Vliet, and of course Jalen Green, who are just the natural guards. Armin Thompson is a guy who you're going to hope is going to be able to guard 1 through 3 as he progresses on in his NBA career. But as of their wings / small forwards, they don't have, I don't think, really a whole lot. You got Dylan Brooks, of course, there. Cam Whitmore, who hasn't really, he's played some decent games so far in the NBA, but again, we haven't seen the best of him. And then, of course, Jashawn Tate, who we really don't know if he will be on this Houston Rockets roster next year. I think there is a massive hole right now for this team to, of course, go out and get some wings / small forwards. And Knight, obviously, not only is he a great scorer, but he's also a great shooter. So when you have guys like, Van Vliet trying to play make, and, of course, Jalen Green trying to shot create, we know Jalen Green, unfortunately, can get himself into trouble at the wrong times. And having a guy to kick it out to like Knight, who obviously, again, has been proven to be a really great shooter so far, and also a decent shot creator. I think this is one that makes very much a lot of sense. Again, other scouts say he projects very clearly to the NBA level and has an NBA-ready game. It's extremely easy to imagine having an impact from day one as a floor spacer wing who can also score in isolation. He's got a beautiful jumper, rises up with a ton of confidence, and can carry the load on the offensive end. He's an explosive athlete in the lane and can drop the hammer on defenders with highlight reel dunks. Again, as I said earlier though, the only knock so far on him is that he is considered to not be exactly the greatest defender. So a lot of really interesting things to, of course, talk about him. Some slight bad things, but I think adding this guy as a backup shooting guard, a backup small forward, a backup small ball power forward, there's definitely a lot that the Houston Rockets can really do right here, and I think this pick makes a ton of sense for them. With the 10th overall pick now, we do, of course, have the Atlanta Hawks, who, I mean, they're definitely going to be going off best available. They're going to have a really interesting offseason. I'm super keen to see who gets traded from this team and who stays. They're actually low-key building, though, I think, still a pretty impressive young core that no one really talks about, which is pretty unfortunate. But it so happens there is a guy right now available at this pick who it's going to be really interesting to see how he goes to the NBA and how he converts. Will he be really good? I'm not sure, but I do know he could be an absolute huge steal for them if so. And that is, of course, Ron Holland. Again, I think people forget that this guy at one stage had people talking about him being a potential pick 1 of this draft. Of course, he is a 6'8" small forward / power forward. Ranked by some places at 12, ranked by other websites at 6. Again, I've got him going near in the middle of number 10. Of course, is being said to be one of the most well-rounded athletes in this draft class. He's extremely fast, he's strong, and he can jump out of the gym with great hops. He has the ideal frame for a wing / forward in the NBA, being 6'8", with long arms and a lot of muscle. He's an elite scorer in transition, gets down the court fast, great mover off the ball. He's a great driver and an extremely good finisher around the rim. And of course, he's a really, really good perimeter defender who can stay in front of his man and contain anyone from bigger guards to big forwards. Again, unfortunately, there are of course some downsides. I mean, I've said everything that's so great about this guy. There's just a lot of things that aren't good. And I think that's where his rank of potentially being a pick 1 kind of dropped. But of course, it's being said, he's not a great passer. He can be turnover prone, so just potentially sometimes not good with the ball in his hands. His 3-point shot isn't consistent at the time making this video. And of course, his shot creation can also be a little bit inconsistent. But again, I think with maturity, leadership, and coaching, especially in the NBA where not necessarily everything is on your shoulders like it might be for him to be the number 1 man, like it is for him where he actually plays in the NBA G League Ignite team. I think going to the NBA and playing with a guy like Trae Young, who still does not get the recognition he deserves as a really good shot creator and shooter, who is also very calm and steady with the ball in his hands. I think going and working under a guy like that, working under a guy like DeJounte Murray, and some good coaching, underrated coaching potentially from Quinn Snyder as well. There's no reason that a guy who is already an elite off-ball player, who can be very good with the ball in his hands, great driver, great finisher, a great perimeter defender, which is always extremely handy in the NBA, a great scorer. There's no reason why all of that, it can't be something really good in the NBA. And again, turning the ball over and not being a good passer, that can sometimes suck, but that can be really easily fixed in the NBA with just composure and coaching. So I think you can already write those two off. Again, the ones that concern me is his shot creation being inconsistent, 3-point shot not being good. It's definitely not great, but again, I think he can absolutely learn, and there's no reason why he couldn't do and be a very good player, of course, in the NBA. So again, I think it makes a lot of sense for the Atlanta Hawks to make this selection. You obviously, while doing this pick as well, I think it gives you more room to see what you want to do with your other players. Some players like DeAndre Hunter have been on the trade market. Kevin Huerter previously was one of those guys. A couple other players here and there might join that conversation. But even if they don't, they still need depth at that wing position anyway. And look, will he start, especially even straight away? Probably not. Will he ever start? Yeah, maybe. But the thing is, right now, you're adding a really good young player who has pick 1 potential over him, and at one stage was supposed to be that guy, to come in and add depth and already join this already pretty decent Atlanta Hawks team that just really suffers from not having much depth. Again, it's got a decent starting 5, a couple extra things here and there to add. I think it can be a pretty solid team, and I think that, you know, adding a guy like Ron Holland does fix a lot of their issues. With the 11th overall pick, we do have the Chicago Bulls, who, again, I think have been one of the most unluckiest teams in the NBA. I think people forget when they had Lonzo Ball, they were seriously a threat, and I think were at one stage like top 2 in the East a couple of years ago with Lonzo. They had something really good going on with not only Ball, but also Levine and DeRozan. Unfortunately, that's kind of been taken away from them with bad luck through injuries and just other off-court, you know, problems. But I think there is a player here who could definitely really help what the Chicago Bulls are looking for and fits well, really good into what I think they need. And that's actually Stefan Castle, who is a 6'6", 6'7" point guard out of UConn, who recently just, of course, won March Madness. He is an extremely good player who I've even had some people not only have in the top 7 of this draft, but I actually saw one guy, I think, on a podcast say he would take Castle at pick number 3 just because he believes he has some of the most upside in this class. It is being said that Castle is a big guard who was at his best with the ball in his hands and using his impressive array of moves to get into the lane to score or make plays for his teammates. He's a dynamic athlete with a quick first step, a lot of shake and bake, and has a great feel for knocking defenders off balance. Again, his outside shot doesn't look that good. In fact, it's not consistent at all. Some even saying he likely won't be a great 3-point shooter, which definitely can be a massive issue in the NBA, of course, but there is so much great upsides about him. Again, he's a great finisher around the rim with extremely good and nice touch with an array of decent finishing moves. He's an active defender, not only on ball, but off the ball as well, kind of being a bit of a pest. He's got a great awareness. He disrupts a ton of plays. Again, his offensive ability, not only is he a good ball handler, good around getting to the rim, while also being a good, solid playmaker. His court vision has greatly improved on executing his passes. And again, some are saying could be potentially the best playmaker in the draft. I think Topic has taken that quite easily, but Castle has really improved so much as he has gone on with that, where I think a lot of teams will be looking for that being a massive bonus. Again, as I said, there are some downsides, being his 3-point shot isn't good. His shooting mechanics on one website actually labels it as being sloppy in terms of his form and the mechanics of that. Apparently, he lacks confidence in scoring, although did improve in the last couple of games. Again, we did see him do pretty well in March Madness. And again, some saying that his overall college season, though, had been a tiny bit inconsistent. Again, you're looking at a guy who has the potential, as mentioned earlier, to be a really high pick in this draft. Is he good enough to be a high pick in this draft? Maybe not top 5 at the time of making this video, but you really do never know what can be proven at the combine and other, of course, private trainings that we do know a lot of NBA players have. And it's really interesting because if he does manage to go a pick 11 here, where I have him to the Chicago Bulls, he fits great into this team because I think he kind of picks up where Lonzo Ball, of course, did leave off. Lonzo Ball was a 6'6" point guard who was an elite defender who could not only play make, but was just very versatile with the ball in his hands. He was good around the rim. He could finish very well, and he was just the ultimate floor general. And that's what I think Stefan Castle might be able to bring to the Chicago Bulls team. If you were to tell him, look, we don't need you to be a shooter. We've got Zach LaVine, who has mostly been known to be an elite shooter. We've got Patrick Williams at power forward, Nikola Vucevic, ton of shooters left, right, and center. Arguably one of the best mid-range shooters of all time in DeMar DeRozan. If he does come back again, we don't know about that just yet. A ton of shooters on this team. I think there is definitely enough room for a player to bite the bullet who doesn't need to shoot, who can just play make, be a good ball handler, and of course be great on the defensive end. There is no reason why Stefan, Castle couldn't do that for the Chicago Bulls. And if Lonzo Ball does manage to get back, I think a ton of people need to realize that he is not going to be what he previously was, especially at the start. Look, there may be a chance he does get back to being the Lonzo Ball we know. It's very slight, unfortunately, with all the injuries, but again, he's not going to be able to play big minutes most likely for a very, very long time. So if he can play the 10 to 15 minutes per night to start off with, that's also good for Castle, because he could probably learn a lot from just watching Lonzo Ball in that short amount of time and kind of replicate what Lonzo Ball has been able to do for his career. We also know Lonzo was known as one of the worst three-point shooters in the league, and then became low-key one of the better and more consistent ones in his very short Chicago Bulls days and end of Pelicans days. There's no reason why Castle couldn't at least try to imitate that and become what Lonzo Ball was supposed to be for the Chicago Bulls before the injury. So I think this is a great decision by them, and they could really go from having not many good quality things at the point guard position to having Lonzo Ball and Castle in. That is a massive, great and big up for this Chicago Bulls team. Now, with the 12th overall pick, we do have the Oklahoma City Thunder, who I've actually got them taking the exact same dude I had them taking last year in Kyle Filipowski. If you're wondering, how the hell did you have them taking him last year if he didn't, of course, get drafted at all? And what happened was Filipowski decided to, the last second, whether he wanted to be an NBA player or not, or stay one more year in college, and he decided to stay one more year in college. And it's kind of weird because in a much weaker draft class, his stock really hasn't gone up that much. But to be honest, I still low-key feel like he would be a very good player to bring in for this OKC team, as they have filled out nearly every position with really young talent, except I think the center position. Other than Chet Holmgren, they don't have a lot there or what they probably need. And I think the reality is, I still think Chet could be spend minutes at power forward throughout his career, just because of how versatile he is. And I think having him and Filipowski share minutes together is a very responsible and easy thing to do, but also Filipowski potentially being a very good backup center for them with this 12th overall pick. Again, it's being said that Kyle Filipowski is a multi-talented 7-foot center who can also potentially spend some time at the power forward position, being a very special player recruited to Duke for 2022, and staying back for another 2 years there. It's being said that he's also a slick ball handler, an excellent passer for a big man who can also shoot the ball. His floor spacing will be the most coveted skill in the NBA level. Kyle has good mobility, but isn't a big-time run-and-jump athlete, and will have to prove he can handle defense in the NBA. It's said that he will have to max out his defensive abilities if he wants to have a long career. Again, that's definitely a big knock. A ton of other reports and scouts here do say that he's not a good rim protector at all, and his presence is definitely not felt in the paint. But again, with how we're looking at Filipowski, I know his defense does suck, which is not good for a center at all. It's completely the reason his draft stock just, I guess, hasn't gone up. But if we're going to look at of course, the positives here, this dude is an offensive beast. And Oklahoma right now are one of the best defensive teams in the league. Can they afford to sacrifice some defense by having Filipowski on the court? Maybe so. But at the same time, he's an offensive beast who I'm not going to call the early bird and say he's got some similarities to Nikola Jokic, because I feel like we say that with about 10 centers in every draft now. But again, there are some tiny similarities in terms of his passing and ball handling for a big is actually pretty good. Like, if you give this guy the ball, he's not going to poo his pants on the court and do something absolutely stupid that I definitely think a lot of centers have been pretty notoriously known to do in the NBA. But again, if you're sending this guy out on the court and you're just telling him, look, we need rebounds now. We need a backup presence from Holmgren. We need a guy who can absolutely tear it up offensively, who can pass, who can shoot well, and who can score us the ball. You take that if you're Oklahoma. Another guy, again, Alfred Şengün, who's a man that people forget has not been notoriously known as being the greatest defender, especially in his first year. It was a massive knock that Şengün was this 6'9" center who couldn't defend the ball at all. But now he's, I think, 6'11". I'm not sure whether, I'm pretty sure he grew like very recently, or at least that's some of the reports were saying. But again, that guy can do a lot of things that Filipowski hopefully should be able to come in the NBA and do. And with such a decent sized hole for them at center position, if you can fill this out, not only having Holmgren as your starting five, but also Filipowski as the backup center, and maybe get another veteran center in, like they had Mike Muscala for so many years, that's a massive bonus that I think Oklahoma will definitely like. And the thing is, as well, as I mentioned earlier, the versatility of maybe having this guy play center minutes and then having Chet at the power forward position is pretty interesting. It's maybe not something that OKC would do with, I feel like them are being a little bit more fast-paced than that. They like to get down the court a fair bit and spread the ball. Again, that's their thing, is if you don't have Giddey in the starting lineup, usually everyone's a really consistent shooter. So again, that's the interesting thing about Oklahoma City, is the Josh Giddey situation. What will they do there? Because he's not the greatest shooter at all. Thing is, though, Giddey really just helps them with their playmaking and is low-key one of the best and most skilled playmakers in the whole entire NBA. So if you're adding Filipowski here too, a big man who can pass the ball, that just so fits into as well what I think this Oklahoma City Thunder team is about. With just, like, everyone on this team can pass the ball. Like, it's just how it's set up. I see people saying, well, SGA is the point guard of this team, right? Well, yes, he's the point guard, but it's like Josh Giddey's the point guard, you know? And then you've got Chet Holmgren, who I've seen that dude play point center. Everyone on this team can basically pass the ball to a very, very good and high standard. And it's just absolutely great basketball to watch every time you watch Oklahoma. And that's why I think, again, Filipowski, his passing, his ball handling, and how he goes about his offense, to me, it fits Oklahoma. I said it last year and I'll say it again. With how their coach goes about their style, that's how I think it should be. And I think as well, having a guy like this who can play you 15 to 20 minutes per night off the bench as your backup center is a good, solid thing. And the thing is too, he's not an 18-year-old like Bilal Coulibaly who you're bringing in. He's not a 19-year-old. I believe this guy is 20, 21 years old. So you're bringing in a more experienced rookie into this team, which also fits where they want to go right now, which is, of course, wanting to now compete, because they've built one of the best young cores in the NBA that is trying to currently win a championship as we speak. So Kyle Filipowski is a great move by Oklahoma, in my opinion, and that's why I have him going with the 12th overall pick. Now, with the 13th overall pick, we have the Sacramento Kings, who, this is a really, really tough pick, because I think Sacramento are pretty good on a lot of things. They've got a couple of young guys who are still coming through. They, of course, have a couple other things here and there going on that we obviously know. Some players might not be on this team. They might be traded. Some players might leave. We'll see how Malik Monk goes next season. Will he return free agency? Not too sure. But with this 13th overall pick, it's hard to say what they need at this time, just because I think there will be a couple of different movements for Sacramento. But with pick 13, I kind of decided to go best available and what I think they might need. And that is, of course, Reed Sheppard, who is a very tough player to put in this draft. Because even though I've got him going 13 to Sacramento, a lot of people have him ranked at pick 7. And the thing is, he's the best shooter in this draft class by an absolute mile. This dude, he could come into the NBA straight away and be one of the best shooters. And with, as I said, Sacramento, will Malik Monk come back? I'm not exactly too sure. They have a couple other point guards / guards that might be getting moved through trades, through free agency, this and that. I figured there's a 6'3" dude right now who is currently balling up in college for Kentucky, who is not only the best shooter in this class, but is an extremely good playmaker, a very good shot creator who is super crafty when he has the ball in his hands, especially around the perimeter. He's got excellent hands on defense. He can strip the ball away from anyone. He's pretty good at guarding point guards and smaller shooting guards. He's super smart, and he just knows how to play the modern day game. Again, Reed is a unique talent. He's a bit of an undersized player for the point guard, or shooting guard position, sorry. He isn't an elite athlete, but just he's a great ability with the ball in his hands to be one of the best shooters in all of college, which should translate to the NBA. Is insane. He's got a solid frame, decent movement skills, and is actually pretty decent around the rim. And I think secret is he can also play make. There are, of course, some issues with Reed Sheppard that kind of make me like, well, can he fit in the NBA level? Because we know his shooting and his offense is going to be so NBA level perfect. But his size and how he plays might be a question. And what I mean by that is, as I said earlier, he's a 6'3", probably going to have to be a point guard in the NBA, but the way he plays like a shooting guard. As I said, he's a very good defender when he's guarding the point guard positions earlier. Extremely good hands and does pretty well at guarding that position. Unfortunately, sometimes, especially when he gets switched on to small forwards or just a taller shooting guard, it is a nightmare for him. You got a 6'3" dude who is a decent defender, as I just said, who would have to potentially guard, you know, a 6'6" to 6'8" shooting guard / small forward in the NBA. He just gets absolutely torched every time. And this is where I was a bit scared, because I was like, is Mike Brown, who is such a good defensive coach, one of the league's best, you know, I think, will he be able to have a guy like Reed Sheppard? Again, Mike Brown has become a pretty good offensive coach, I think, in his time too. Some might even know him for that now. But with how I see it, it does scare me a little bit having a dude like Reed Sheppard in this team just based off his defense not being great. But as I mentioned earlier, there will be movement with this Sacramento team. They've got Fox at the 1, like I said, Kevin Huerter at the 2 as their main guards. But if I remember right, Kevin Huerter did recently just get injured. I'm not exactly too sure for how long, but I think he'll definitely play, I think the majority of next season. I think he's getting shoulder surgery, so we'll have to see how he goes with there. But as I said, Malik Monk, he's going to get a ton of contract offers. I expect him to come back, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was to potentially see a massive offer from another team and be gone. Chris Duarte, I don't know if he will be on this team for much longer. I don't know if I really rate him as a player. Davion Mitchell as well. He could definitely get traded. It just really hasn't worked out that much on this Sacramento Kings team. So there will definitely be a massive hole for them to go out and look for some more, I think, guards, depending how a lot of this free agency and trade period does play out. Reed Sheppard is a scoring machine who is an elite shooter who you're always going to love. And with pick 13, you're not going to expect to get some game-changing player, especially in this draft, which has been so noted to be such a weaker draft. You might just have to bite the bullet and bring in a guy like Reed Sheppard, because he is such a great offensive player. Again, his defense might not fit this Sacramento Kings team, but I think bite the bullet and see how you go, because I think the upside for the Sacramento Kings team with Reed Sheppard in it is very good, and it takes a ton of pressure off your team if Malik Monk leaves, because then you can say, well, we got a great scoring guard off the bench now who is an elite shooter who can just completely make up for that. And then if Malik Monk decides to stay, well, having him and Malik Monk on the court together at the same time would be so beautiful to watch offensively. It would not be funny for a lot of other NBA teams. Now, with the 14th overall pick, we do have the Portland Trailblazers, who, again, previously I did have them selecting Martz Baziles, who I think can be one of the best players in this class. I've seen some people even have that guy at pick 1. I had him going at pick 5 earlier, obviously, to the team. But with the 14th overall pick, I will have them selecting Jacoby Walter out of Baylor. Again, this guy is a great three-point shooter, which I think they desperately need in this Portland Trailblazers team. He's being said to be one of the best in the whole entire draft. He's a decent shot creator who has a ton of upside in the NBA. He's got a great motor, really competitive defender who some believe could turn into being one of the best defenders in this draft class. A very, very good player if his development does pan out. Again, he's a 6'5", 6'6", I believe, shooting guard wing, who I definitely think can add some nice scoring for this Portland Trailblazers team. Again, if you're looking to use him as a point guard, completely forget it. Reports say that he can't handle the ball really at all, and he does struggle a lot as a playmaker. He just really, I think, has that, I think, ability to be a good role player in this NBA. A player like KCP, who he's compared to, who KCP does not get enough credit. A starting wing for the Lakers in their championship year, a elite defender who can shoot really well as being a championship player for the Denver Nuggets. That man is what you want to be if you want to be a role player. KCP being severely underrated for his whole entire career thus far. Again, Jacoby Walter, if you can ask this man to come in and do what KCP has done, guard the shooting guard, guard the small forward position, while being an elite three-point shooter on this Portland Trailblazers team, it fixes a ton of the problems that they have. It says Walter is the prototypical two guard who has size and great tools to be a high-level talent in the NBA. He is a skilled shot maker with deep range on his jumper and a very good shooting form. He has a really smooth release and puts great rotation on the ball. His outside shot is the most intriguing NBA skill he has. Again, as I said, Walter, he's not exactly the greatest playmaker. Ball handling can be a question sometimes. But as I mentioned earlier as well, he competes on both ends on defense. He doesn't take plays off and is always the most aware defender on the court. He has the tools to not only be a good defender, but a great defender, and should really convert over to the NBA. He's a pretty good athlete, maybe not NBA standards, but again, KCP, some might beg to differ on him as well. And I just really think he could be what KCP has kind of become now in this league. And that's really all you can ask for. A lot of those players are making a ton of money. We just saw Grayson Allen re-signed for like $20 million the other year, which is, yeah, the other day, sorry, that's a lot of money. It was like 15 to 20, and that guy does a lot of things really good. Elite shooter who has definitely improved much more on defense. Jacoby Walter just needs to come in with the mindset that I can be a great defender in this NBA while also being a very good and capable shooter. With the 15th overall pick, we do have the Miami Heat, who of course found themselves in a real interesting situation. This will be one of the highest picks they've had in recent time, and highest pick, I believe, since Tyler Hero. And again, I kind of just decided to go not only best available, but what I think might be a positional need for them. And that actually happens to be Isaiah Collier, who is a 6'4" point guard / shooting guard. A lot of drafts actually have him ranked 11 through 13. I've actually got him sliding down here to 15, which again, Miami like to take a lot of those steal type of players. So this one definitely suits it. Again, Isaiah Collier is one of the best guards in this draft. As being said, he's one of the best athletes in the whole entire class. He's not only strong, he's extremely fast and has almost jumped out of his gym shoes. He's a good ball handler, very crafty, very shifty player, and has the physical tools to give him a clear advantage over almost anyone who tries to guard him. Great finisher. He's great. He's got great court vision, making him a really decent playmaker as well. He's a good scorer in transition, has a really solid mid-range jump shot, and he can also create space for himself. Again, there are a couple of downsides. Even though he can be a great playmaker and does have court vision, he has the unfortunate knack to make a turnover when you really don't want him to. He can be inconsistent on his passes at time. Like, again, as I said, great playmaker for the most part, but if you're going to catch him in a bad game where he's turned it over once or twice, that's unfortunately probably going to continue, and it's one of the big things he's going to have to, of course, improve on in the NBA. He's also not exactly the greatest three-point shooter out there, which for the way he plays, I don't necessarily know if you extremely have to be. There have been players, that have been taken in his position before later in the draft who are just into score and are being told to develop their jump shot later. Again, the only, I think, major concern that would stop the Miami Heat from, of course, drafting him here is his defense just has not been good really at all. Again, this dude is still a 6'4" guard though, who I think will definitely be a good defender over time. Again, having the athletic ability that he does, the size and the height that he also has, you would think he is going to be pretty comfortable over time guarding the point guard positions in the NBA. But with how he plays, he might have to play some shooting guard, and we of course know defending a shooting guard at times can be a lot more difficult than defending a point guard, because there are some shooting guards in the NBA now who are legitimately 6'7", 6'8" tall. So there's a lot that has to go into, obviously, guarding the shooting guard position as well. Now, again, where the Miami Heat do currently sit, we really don't know who they're going to be, I think, going further forward with in the future. There's been some rumors at the time making this video that they're going to trade Jimmy Butler. I don't think that's going to happen, but apparently Jimmy Butler's been causing some issues, and Pat Riley's even had to call him out. We know that they also wanted to potentially bring in someone to fit more of the young core of what Hero and, of course, Bam Adebayo have. Again, if the Heat do look like they are actually going to want to go a bit younger, which they haven't done in a minute right now, I do believe they are going to keep this pick. And I also believe that they are going to look for not only best available, but positional need too. And I think Isaiah Collier does fit there. Now, interesting thing is he doesn't have a direct comparison so far in the NBA, but it's been said that he has shades of Jamal Murray in terms of his quickness and versatility to score around the basket, being a very shifty, of course, ball handler. Some Jaden Ivey in here as well, again, being a taller guard who can score, but hasn't really been that great as a defender. Again, Ivey is a 6'5" guy who just hasn't worked that well with his defense in the NBA thus far. So I'm guessing Isaiah Collier, that would be his knack on him, that where they say he's like, Jaden Ivey. So again, I think his defense could come. I still think Jaden Ivey's defense might come. Like, the thing is as well, Isaiah Collier is averaging 16 points per game and 4.5 assists. I think he would be cool for the Miami Heat, and I feel like he might work with Tyler Hero. You're probably going to want more of a playmaker in there, but even not, with this pick, you still also might want a scoring guard off the bench, which I don't think they really have. Their bench is going to need a massive overhaul this offseason. That is very, very obvious, and I wouldn't be surprised if drafting a dude like Isaiah Collier is going to be the one of the big steps that they, of course, decide to do. So again, that's why with the 15th overall pick, I've got the Miami Heat selecting Isaiah Collier out of USC. Now, moving on to the 16th overall pick, we have one of the surprise teams in the Orlando Magic, who, again, this is a very, very tough pick. This is probably the toughest pick, so I'm like, I really don't know who they're going to draft. Of course, they could legitimately take absolutely anyone here. I took a bit of positional need into account and where I think they, of course, might go. But I've actually got them selecting Tijan Saloon, which I'm hoping I got his name right. I know his last name, from what I've heard, is Saloon. Yeah, he's got one of those harder names to definitely pronounce. He's actually from France and will be about the 888th player in this draft class drafted out of France. The first 2 picks in my projected draft, Zachary Rasache and Alexander Sarr, are of course from France. And now we got Saloon as well, who also is from France. Now, again, before I get into the amazing positive with Saloon, I would just like to talk about the upsides and the downsides. Of course, it's being said, he is an awesome athlete. He's super fast and has great hops. He's a really good 3-point shooter with good mechanics and a high release point. He's great at playing off the ball, and he's a pretty good cutter. A leader in transition, and he gets down the court faster than most. He's a high upside defender. His length, agility, and flashes of skill give him elite upside as a defender. Some downsides: he's extremely bad with the ball in his hands half the time. Like, if you're looking for this dude to create a shot, it's probably not going to happen. The lucky thing, though, with the Orlando Magic is they have a ton of shot creators on their team. So this dude can definitely be a really nice off-ball asset to them. And, of course, he is raw and is being said to actually need quite a fair bit of time to develop. With how the Magic are going, do they have time to develop a guy like this? Maybe, maybe not. But again, dudes like Jet Howard and stuff should be, of course, making that next step next year and getting a lot more minutes. So having a dude like Salon will be a very, very, I think, necessary thing to, of course, have him develop, you know, as maybe a 13th to 15th man. It's being said that he has shades of Mikal Bridges and John Collins. We know that when John Collins can get the ball in his hands, he can be pretty sloppy. I low-key feel like Mikal Bridges is a good shot creator, but he's not as great as what we all thought he was going to be. But there is one reporter out there, and this is why he's an interesting player, Tijan Saloon, is because he is actually being said that he could have traits of Giannis. Now, this is really interesting because, as I said earlier, this pick might be like the 2013 NBA draft, where realistically we don't exactly know who is going to be the best players in this class. It could be absolutely anyone, and someone random might, of course, pop up. Now, I believe Gobert was also in the 2013 draft. I could be wrong on that, but I know Giannis definitely was. He went like 15th overall, and of course we know he became an absolute freak. Again, Salon, right now, I do have him going with the 16th overall pick. So it kind of matches up in terms of that. A lot of people are saying he does have some comparisons as well, as he's elite in transition. Again, Giannis, when he was drafted, was actually a pretty good 3-point shooter, and I believe they have similar shooting mechanics. That was before Giannis turned into my 600-pound life of pure muscle athlete. Again, Salon is also an awesome athlete, and it's being said he's super fast and is a, of course, great dunker here and there as well. So, realistic thing is, maybe if you gave this guy time to develop, like how Giannis, of course, developed over those years, we might be looking at a man who could possibly be really good in the NBA and a really good player for the Orlando Magic. So that's why I've got them taking Tijan Saloon with this pick. Of course, with the 17th overall pick, we have the Toronto Raptors. Again, this was another hard pick. I didn't know who to really draft here, so I kind of just went best available, and I decided to take the G League player Tyler Smith, who I've legitimately heard some people say could go like top 10 if he actually figured his play out. Again, one website has him ranked 15th, one has 21, and one has 19. He's a great three-point shooter. He's being said to be pretty solid off ball. He's got good shot creation. He's also a solid rim protector who is a pretty versatile defender. But the issues with Tyler Smith are very, very big. There are two major issues which could make him, I guess, a pick that definitely really slides. And that's being said that he does have a decent floor, but he apparently doesn't have much upside. And what a lot of these websites are saying by this is, if you were going to draft Tyler Smith, basically the player you are drafting is what you are getting. There is a chance he doesn't improve that much. And he's also being said to have a lot of issues in terms of he's not a great playmaker, and sometimes he ruins the ball movement a little bit. He's kind of the type of player where, like, he's a good scorer, and if you sent him to, like, the Australian Basketball League, who, you know, the NBL, who needs some scoring, would be able to be a pretty solid player. So that's why I have a lot of worries with Tyler Smith in terms of, is this dude an NBA player? Or is he going to be a player who's going to excel overseas or in the G League for the rest of his life, right? The thing is, though, the player he is right now is pretty good. So if you're saying he's not going to get a lot better, I think some NBA teams might actually, you know, take the risk on that and might just say, look, we know he's not going to get better, but we actually kind of like what we see right now. So if he can be a 8-point per game type of guy forever in his career, that's gonna be a good thing, right? Again, we got to remember as well, this draft is different to most drafts. Again, sometimes at pick 17, you're looking for a really good player who could still turn into being a really good starter for your team. In this year's draft, from almost like pick 12 onwards, you are looking for role players in this year's draft. Again, that's how weak it is. Tyler Smith, of course, being a small forward and power forward, he's a good defender, and I just feel like the reason I took this pick was, not only is he probably somewhat best available, but I feel like the Raptors might need some scoring off the bench. They might need some help off the bench. They've got a really good and underrated starting five, which has been underrated for a minute now, but I think they need a guy or two off the bench. And if you're just saying, look, let's just bring in this forward, he can guard small forward, he can guard power forward, he's a serviceable defender, and all we need is for him to come and average 8 points per game in his career, then we will be happy about that. Now again, will he improve? As I said, probably not, but teams are going to know this, and I think with the Raptors team, who is going to be looking for a lot of depth off that bench probably in this offseason, unless they want to continue to take the back seat and furthermore become one of the worst teams in the league and rebuild. You know, they could do that either way, but also the Raptors have been known to be a team that kind of likes to rebuild on the run, so I wouldn't be surprised if they still tried to fill out this bench. And again, drafting a guy like Tyler Smith, it's a fine idea. Again, he's not going to probably be a starter anytime soon, but if you're just looking for a dude who's going to average you 8 points off the bench, solid defense, you really can't ask for more, especially with the 17th overall pick in this year's draft. Now again, with the 18th overall pick, we have the New Orleans Pelicans, and my eyes, when I see what the Pelicans need, I think they of course need some center depth, and that's why I've actually got them taking Ivis Missy out of Baylor, a 6'11" center who is actually, I think, one of the most exciting players in this draft. Now, he is really raw. Don't get me wrong. He's one of the most raw players in this draft. But if you've got a spare minute or so, put down the Abala Danger video, put down the Lana Rhodes video on your phone, hop off that website and go and watch some highlights of Ivis Missy, because I guarantee you, he will touch you in ways that better than any Abala Danger video can. This dude's an exciting guy. Again, he only averages 11 points per game on 5.5 rebounds. But I like how he plays. Like, I don't know what it is. He just seems to be a really nice and athletic center who can be a really good pick and roll player in the NBA. Again, it's being said that he has great rim protection as well in terms of if you're looking for a good defender, a great shot blocker. His length and IQ really help him with that as well. He's a super effective pick and roll man. You compare him with any good point guard and he could be elite in this area. He's a great lob threat in that pick and roll as well. Decent defender, decent rebounder, sorry. But again, outside of that, there are some downsides. Again, very raw, as I said earlier, and he doesn't provide much value outside of the paint, offensively or defensively, other than the pick and roll. Again, that's fine. You're not, especially in this draft, you're not looking for a dude who's going to be the next, Victor Wembanyama at this rate. You're just looking for a guy who's going to come in and play his role. It is being said that he's compared to Clint Capella or how Mark Williams is. And I actually think Mark Williams is a really good player on that Hornets team. And I've said this for a long time. The issue with Mark Williams is he's not good enough to, I think, be a starting center in the NBA, but he's too good to be a backup center in the NBA. I know it doesn't make really any sense, but that's how this Ivis Missy guy might be. He's not going to be good enough to be a starting center, but he could develop into being one of the best backup centers in the whole entire NBA. Again, the New Orleans Pelicans, they're going to need depth at that center position too. I believe Jonas Valanciunas is a free agent. I'm not exactly too sure if they're going to bring him back. He might get some ridiculous offer. And also, he has regressed a lot as a player. We know that Jackson Hayes as well really did nothing for the New Orleans Pelicans to the point where they legitimately let him go to like the Los Angeles Lakers for free. They're going to need some centers on this team. I have always liked the idea of Zion playing center. I've said this for a while. I think Zion would actually be a good center in the NBA. I know he's only 6'7" and he'd get caught defensively for a fair bit. But if you really want having like that small ball Zion at center with Missy maybe coming off the bench as a backup would kind of be pretty cool. Then you probably have to sign a veteran center to help out here and there. I've just thought having a spacing of Zion at center and doing some point forward or point center plays is how I would do it. Again, the Pelicans are yet to do this. They have run him at point forward a couple times, but for some reason they refuse to play him at center. It actually really annoys me because I've had this idea for a while, and again, he just hasn't played much center in his NBA career, and I legitimately believe it would be a pretty cool idea. Having a dude like Ivis Missy on this team, there's also playmakers on this Pelicans team. They probably need to add another one or two, but Dyson Daniels, I think, will become a very good playmaker in the NBA. CJ McCollum still does the job here and there as well. But yeah, I just think Ivis Missy for the Pelicans, it makes a lot of sense, and they're going to need some centers. They're probably going to draft one here no matter what, I'm assuming, unless they decide to go out in free agency and spend money there. But yeah, having a guy like Ivis Missy on this team makes a ton of sense for me and is an exciting live wire who I think they will really like. Now, with the 19th overall pick, we have the Philadelphia 76ers, and goodness gracious me, are they going to be doing some interesting things this offseason? I'm not sure if they're going to keep this pick. They'll probably have to, because I don't think there's going to be too much trading in the draft this year in terms of teams looking at picks and stuff. But I've actually got them taking Jared McCain out of Duke. Now, I think Jared McCain is actually a good player, even though there's some different things that are said about him. Again, Duke low-key just keep bringing in good players every single year. They've got Tyrese Proctor on that team, of course, as well, of Kyle Filipowski. So they've got a couple dudes that are going to get drafted this year too. And when I look at McCain, I do think of those McCain ads that we have in Australia.
McCain, you've done it again.
I'm not going to lie. Like, McCain, you've done it again. But I like him. I think he's a good player. He averages 14.5 points per game on 5 rebounds. Even though he's listed as a point guard on the website I'm looking at right now, I'm imagining he's going to be more of a shooting guard in the NBA. It's being said that he's a good 3-point shooter who's good at moving off the ball and getting in positions to not only find a shot, but be really good on the catch and shoot opportunities. He's a better passer reports say than the numbers do indicate. So maybe he can convert to being a good playmaker in the NBA. He's smart with the ball and good at executing his passes. He's a solid perimeter defender, and he does a good job containing guards, whether that's point guard or shooting guard. Some downsides though. He's a smaller player, and when you have him at that shooting guard position at 6'3", he might struggle. He also plays on a team with a lot of guards, so he hasn't really had much opportunity to shine, as he's had to share the ball with players like Tyrese Proctor as well. It's also being said that he's not exactly the greatest shot creator, and his self-creation can sometimes be inconsistent and doggy doo-doo. So this is going to be interesting to see where McCain goes in this draft. How I was looking at Philadelphia is, I think, again, with this pick, you're not going to be looking for someone to start. That's very obvious. Tyrese Maxey will be their starting point guard going forward. Joel Embiid will be their starting center going forward as well. They're looking at a lot of different players here. They still have D'Anthony Melton, who's been good. Kelly Oubre might come back. I'm not exactly too sure. Tobias Harris is definitely going to go to the Detroit Pistons on like $1 million per second, apparently, because that's the ridiculous contract they're offering him. So they're going to have some money to move. Again, there's been reports they're going to target a couple different dudes here and there. But if they do that, another point of emphasis for them will be to, of course, retain a good bench that can help out pretty well. And Patrick Beverley, you know, they traded him away. They lost a guard off the bench. What are they going to be doing with their backup guard positions? I'm not sure. D'Anthony Melton is still there and Tyrese Maxey starts. But other than that, I think they might be a tiny bit weak. And that's why I've kind of got McCain going here. I suppose when he does first come into the NBA, though, he's probably going to be a 12th to 15th man. I don't particularly see this guy getting too much minutes too quickly. In fact, there's some websites that have him rated like 16th, some that have him like 19th, where I've got this pick, but then some that have him like in 30. So it's tough again as well, because he's also had to play a lot of his career so far with a ton of guards. So he's really had to, I think, prove himself a bit extra, and there still might be a little bit more than meets the eye of what we're seeing right now. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how this, of course, does go. I do think that with how Jared McCain has gone, he has worked himself up into still being a top 20 pick. I still think the Philadelphia 76ers desperately need to draft and retain depth. So I think they'll keep this pick. And I also think that this guy, he might not play for a fair bit. But if someone, again, touch wood, this doesn't happen. But if someone like D'Anthony Melton or Tyrese Maxey were to go down with an injury, then they're, of course, going to need to, I think, have a guy like Jared McCain actually step up and potentially play some minutes. Now, with the 20th overall pick, we do have my team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. You know damn well I had to put extra focus on this pick. A lot of you guys who have been watching these draft videos now have been asking me, who do I go for? Again, come on, lads. You should know I'm a massive Cleveland Cavaliers fan. And I'm not going to lie. With this 20th overall pick, I've actually gone very, very unconventional here. And I really like the player. And I have done my research on this man and why I think he would be a very good fit for the Cavaliers team. And that's actually, of course, Johnny Philipi from Kansas. Now, you guys might be thinking, whoa. He's only drafted him because he's Australian. Look, me and my brother Johnny Philipi, we got that in common. That's for sure. But in case you haven't noticed, the Cleveland Cavaliers, for some reason, consistently still have issues with their three-point shooters. And even though they dumped like $25 million this most recent free agency in shooting, it didn't really improve that much in my opinion. Max Strus on $16 million a year was so inconsistent for the Cavs. And again, he plays his best ball at shooting guard, but has to play small forward, even small ball power forward when Allen's hurt or Mobley's hurt. If Donovan Mitchell does get traded, I think Max Strus will play shooting guard minutes next year. But then there's the other one, of course, George Niang, who just sucked for the Cavaliers this year. He came in looking like someone from My 600 Pound Life Again, no offense, George Niang, but I'm also fat myself, so I can call you out for this, because if I got paid $9 million, I'd make sure to maybe get a little bit more fit. The Cavaliers are most likely going to exile him off. They're probably going to trade him to a team who is looking to take a chance on a guy like George Niang. Again, they're going to need some outside shooting, and Johnny Philipi is actually really perfect for that. It's being said that he's one of the best shooters in the entire draft class, and maybe the best movement and off-ball shooters in the whole entire draft. His form is great, and he has been extremely efficient behind the three-point line. He's really good at playing off the ball. He's a smart cutter, he's fast, and he's really good at creating space for himself. He's a good athlete, not exactly explosive, but he has a ton of energy and a higher vertical than most would suspect. He puts a ton of effort into both ends of the court, and he can rebound really well. Because of this, he's a very solid defender, and he moves well on his feet and has great length and athleticism to swallow players whole, this website says. Pause, man. What the fuck? That's crazy. But also, his downsides say he plays almost exclusively off the ball, so we haven't seen much of what he looks like with the ball in his hands. He has a really small sample size given the fact that he, again, didn't have consistent minutes to start the season, and his decision making can be a bit iffy, although no one is really too concerned with it at the moment. He's actually being compared to Grayson Allen right now, who I feel like has gone pretty underrated in his career. Again, he just signed like a $20 million deal though, so clearly not that underrated right now. Again, there's a lot of pros with Johnny Philipi. And what I'm saying is, even though he's not really supposed to go with this pick, don't be surprised if the Cleveland Cavaliers do it. Again, he was ranked 28th on ESPN and 23 on Fanspo, and I do have him going 20th, of course, with this pick, which would be 8th ahead of his projected. But let me tell you a couple reasons why I love Johnny Philipi, other than him being a great shooter who fits so much needs for the Cavaliers. And of course, I think, again, he's an Aussie, so I gotta love the dude, right? Again, let me talk about some things with Johnny Philipi first. First of all, in the first half of his career at college, you would not have even heard of this guy. This dude, I don't even believe, was ranked in the draft. Then slowly but surely, he started doing some really good things in terms of shooting really well that caught a lot of teams' eyes, and again, a lot of people really liked what they saw. In the span of a couple of months, he went from being an undrafted player to being ranked 28th on ESPN. Is it too early for him to go and nominate for the draft? Maybe. Should he play another couple years of college? Probably he should, right? But the thing is, I think teams are seeing and have convinced him to nominate for the draft just because of how quickly he's improved. And his best thing is shooting and defense, which teams absolutely love in the NBA. The realistic thing is the Cavaliers are going to be making a couple moves that probably see them dumping George Niang's contract to a team like San Antonio, etc., right? Who might be looking to take on some contracts for a couple second round picks. The Cavaliers are going to need a dude like Johnny Philipi, and especially if he doesn't play much to start off with, they're going to still need to develop him. And the Cavaliers have time to do this. People forget that if we take away Donovan Mitchell, the Cavaliers are still a really young team. Garland's like 24, Mobley's like 23, Allen's like 25, Okoro's like, again, 23. Mobley might even be like 22, I think. Emoni Bates, who might be better for this team pretty soon, is like 20. A guy like Johnny Philipi is only 19. This is still one of the younger teams in the NBA. And if they do decide to trade Donovan Mitchell, which I don't know if that's going to happen, whatever it might be there, this definitely could be a situation where the Cavaliers take a step backwards to take 2 steps forward. Maybe hit the draft for another year. Maybe after that they might return to the draft, of course, with the picks that they would maybe get back from Mitchell, maybe from doing a couple other things here and there as well. There's definitely a lot of room for them to look at this. They'll still own their picks that are pick swapped with the Utah Jazz too. Again, Johnny Philipi makes a ton of sense for this Cavaliers team. Whether they're looking to still remain a top 4 contending team with Donovan Mitchell, or if maybe they trade Donovan Mitchell and push back to like an 8th seed, Johnny Philipi is still a great addition to this Cavaliers team, who would absolutely make a ton of sense. They desperately need shooting. He fits in with their defensive game style that they will still most likely have, whether JB Bickerstaff's with the team next year or not. It makes a ton of sense, and that's why I've got the Cleveland Cavaliers selecting Johnny Philipi with the 20th overall pick out of Kansas. But of course, if you haven't already, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Comment your thoughts and opinions on this all down below. Where do you guys think Johnny Philipi is, of course, going to end up? Do you guys think the Cavaliers should look at him? What do you guys think about all my other picks? Do you guys all agree with them or not? I'd very much like to know. If you don't, please comment your thoughts and opinions down below. I'd very much like to hear. Again, subscribe to the channel for all the latest NBA content and NBA news. Subscribe to my gaming channel and my IRL/vlogging channels. Links for them will, of course, be in the description down below. But as I was saying, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.